Good afternoon, everybody. This is Steve Fletcher with a trumpet for my people. Today is January 20th, 2019, and as I begin this video, we are just a few hours away from the blood moon that is going to be taking place later tonight. And I want to talk to you about the final appointed time of 5778. The Lord has set times, appointed times, also known as divine appointments. And there is one divine appointment that remains in the year 5778. Divine appointment in the Strong's Hebrew is 4150. It's called a moedim or a moed, an appointed time, an appointed place, or an appointed meeting. And we see this in Leviticus chapter 23, where 6 different times it is confirmed in Leviticus 23, these are the Lord's appointed times. The feasts of the Lord, appointed times. And in the book of Leviticus, we are shown that there are 7 appointed times. These are shown in Leviticus chapter 23, the 7 feasts, the 7 moeds, the 7 divine appointments, the 7 appointed times of the Lord: Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, Pentecost, trumpets, Day of Atonement, and tabernacles. There are 7 appointed times that are confirmed in Leviticus chapter 23. Now, this is a very important piece of information that I'm going to share with you. And we're going to do a word study, a Bible study, and we're going to find out, is Purim an appointed time? Is Purim a feast authorized of the Lord, an appointed time? Is Purim a divine appointment? In Esther 9:31, it says, to confirm these days of Purim in their times appointed, according as Mordecai the Jew and Esther the queen had enjoined them. Esther 9:31 says that Purim is a time appointed. Let's study the book of Esther chapter 9, and we're going to read through the majority of Esther chapter 9 and get an understanding of Purim as established by the Lord. And then we're going to look at 2 specific verses within Esther chapter 9 that confirms that Purim is an appointed time. Esther chapter 9, let's read through a good portion of this and discuss this together. Esther chapter 9. Now in the 12th month, that is the month of Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near to be put in execution, in the day that the enemies of the Jews hoped to have power over them, though it was turned to the contrary, that the Jews had rule over them that hated them, the Jews gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus to lay hand on such as sought their hurt, and no man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all the people. So it begins by giving us the calendar, the date of Purim. It's the 12th month, the 13th day is the date of Purim. Goes on to say in verse 5, thus the Jews smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, and slaughter and destruction, and did what they would unto those that hated them. And in Shushan the palace the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men. The 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews, slew they, but on the spoil laid they not their hands. On that day, the number of those that were in Shushan the palace was brought before the king. And the king said unto Esther the queen, the Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan the palace, and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is thy petition, and it shall be granted thee? Or what is thy request further, and it shall be done? Then said Esther, if it please the king, let it be granted to the Jews which are in Shushan to do tomorrow also according unto this day's decree, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows. And the king commanded it be so done, and the decree was given at Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons. For the Jews that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th day also of the month Adar, and slew 300 men at Shushan, but on the prey they laid not their hand. But the other Jews that were in the other kings' provinces gathered themselves together, and stood for their lives, and had rest from their enemies, and slew of their foes 75,000, but they laid not their hands on the prey. On the 13th day of the month Adar, and on the 14th day of the same rested they, and it made it a day of feasting and gladness. But the Jews that were at Shushan assembled together on the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th thereof, and on the 15th day of the same they rested, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. So here we have confirmed that the days of Purim in the 12th month are the 13th, 14th, and 15th days of the 12th month. Therefore the Jews of the villages that dwelt in the unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month Adar a day of gladness and feasting, and a good day, and of sending portions one to another. And Mordecai wrote those things and sent letters unto all the Jews that were in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, both nigh and far, to establish this among them, that they should keep the 14th day of the month Adar, and the 15th day of the same yearly, as the days wherein the Jews rested from their enemies, and the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to joy, from mourning into a good day, that they should make them days of feasting and joy, and of sending portions one to another, and gifts to the poor. Verse 22 reminds me of what it says in Revelation 11:10, when it says, the inhabitants of the earth will gloat over them and will celebrate by sending each other gifts, because these two prophets had tormented those who live on the earth. This is interesting because in Revelation 11, when it talks about the death of the two witnesses, it talks about them being dead for 3 days. The sending of gifts that takes place, and Purim is a 3-day feast. Just as it says in verse 22, as the days wherein the Jews rested from their enemies, and the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to joy, and from mourning into a good day, that they should make them days of feasting and joy, and of sending portions one to another, and gifts to the poor. So there is a feast within within Israel that has to do with the sending of gifts, written here in Esther chapter 9. It's a 3-day feast. And during the death of the two witnesses, there are 3 days involved, and it's also shown that there is sending of gifts. Continue reading in Esther chapter 9, verse 26. Wherefore they called these days Purim, after the name of Pur. Therefore, for all the words of this letter, and of that which they had seen concerning this matter, and which had come unto them, the Jews ordained and took upon them, and upon their seed, and upon all such as joined themselves unto them, so as it should not fail, that they would keep these 2 days according to their writing, and according to their appointed time every year. Here we see for the first time it says this is an appointed time every year, that these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, every family, every province, every city, that these days of Purim should not fail from among the Jews, nor the memorial of them perish from their seed. Then Esther the queen, the daughter of Abihail, and Mordecai the Jew, wrote with all authority to confirm this second letter of Purim. He sent the letters unto all the Jews to the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus with words of peace and truth, to confirm these days of Purim in their times appointed, according as Mordecai the Jew and Esther the queen had enjoined them, and as they had decreed for themselves and for their seed the matters of the fastings and their cry. And the decree of Esther confirmed these matters of Purim, and it was written in the book. So we see in verse 27, Daniel 9:27. No, it's Esther 9:27. The Jews ordained and took upon them and upon their seed and upon all such as joined themselves unto them, so as it should not fail, that they would keep these 2 days according to their writing and according to their appointed time every year. This word appointed time in the Hebrew is 2165 Zeman, and it means appointed time. So this is exactly what it says in Leviticus chapter 23. The Moedim is a different number, but there is another word in the Hebrew that means appointed time. And this is the word that is used here. So it does show that this is an appointed time every year. And in verse 28, it says that these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation. Also confirming that every year, throughout all generations, Purim should be established, should be celebrated. That means that it is an appointed time for every year, for every generation, that these days of Purim should not fail from among the Jews. It goes on to say in verse 31, to confirm these days of Purim in their times appointed. Again, it repeats this same term, the same number, 2165 in the Hebrew, appointed time. To confirm these days of Purim in their times appointed. To confirm these days of Purim as an appointed time. This is confirmed 2 times now in the book of Esther, chapter 9. Purim is confirmed as an appointed time. This is very important as we are waiting on the coming of the Lord, as we are waiting on this final year of Israel. There is another appointed time that has yet to be celebrated, that has yet to come. This appointed time of Purim is now the 8th feast. This is the 8th feast confirmed in the Word of God as an appointed time. The Bible says everything shall be confirmed with 2 or more witnesses. There are 2 witnesses in Esther chapter 9 that Purim is an appointed time. So this becomes the 8th feast of Israel. Very important. The 8th feast, the number 8 relating to eternity. Now, if we look at the calendar of Now, the other thing I was going to say, I wanted to say one more thing before I move on. Okay, we look at the 8th feast and we look at Purim, and we see the relationship of Purim with Esther and the wicked Haman. It says the wicked Haman, and the wicked one also is described. The name of the Antichrist is the wicked one. Okay? And we have the desire of Haman to destroy the Jews. And so we have a connection to the Purim is connected to the Antichrist. It's connected to the Great Tribulation, the time of Jacob's trouble, when the Antichrist will want to annihilate the Jews. Okay? And so this is the 8th feast. It is an appointed time, as we have already confirmed. Okay, so there's a connection. Very interesting, very important. The beginning of the Great Tribulation. Could it possibly be on Purim? And the way Purim is connected to the wicked one, Haman, the desire to annihilate the Jews, the time of Jacob's trouble, the 8th feast, an appointed time of the Lord. So if we look at the calendar of 5778, the true calendar based on New Year on Nisan 1, which was last year, March 16th. So if we look at the year 5778, based on the calendar, the true calendar that begins on Nisan 1, the head of the year, the true new year, the first month, the head of the months is Nisan 1. And this goes all the way back to the time of Moses in Exodus chapter 12, when the Lord confirmed to Moses, this month shall be the beginning of months for you, and it was Nisan, the month of Passover. So we look at this year, 5778, began last year on March 16th. Then we have Passover on March 31st. We have Pentecost on May 20th. We have Rosh Hashanah, or what is the Feast of Trumpets, September 10th. We have Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, on September 19th. And we have Tabernacles on September 24th. And the last day of Tabernacles is October 1st. On this calendar, then we have Hanukkah, December 3rd through the 10th. And Purim is March 21st. The 14th day of the 12th month is March 21st. So here we look at the Hebrew calendar month of March. This is from the Hebrew calendar. I will leave a link for you so you can see the Hebrew calendar. They have counted an extra month this year, because if they look at March, if they look at the month of March, and if they do not add an extra month this year, then the new moon of the new moon of March will be on March 7th. And that is very early. And so what they do then is they add a 13th month. And this is the Hebrew calendar. This is the calendar that is being followed in Israel, and brings us to the month of March as the month of Purim. Okay, so we look at the month of March, and we see that the dates of Purim are March 20th, March 21st, and March 22nd. We have 3 days according to the Hebrew calendar. It's the 13th, 14th, and 15th of the 12th month. So this brings us to the last day of Purim. And I wanted to share with you this very important detail that the Lord has showed me about the last day of Purim. The last day of Purim is Friday, March 22nd. And it's very interesting that the last day of winter is Thursday, March 21st. It says in Matthew chapter 24, verse 20, "Pray that your flight be not in winter, neither on the Sabbath day." Pray that your flight be not in winter, neither on the Sabbath day. So if we look at the last day of the last feast of Israel, in this year that is year 5778, the 70th year of Israel, the last feast, the last day of the feast, it is Friday, March 22nd, 2019. And this day fulfills perfectly and exactly the saying of Jesus Christ in Matthew 24:20 about our flight. Pray that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. March 21st, Thursday, is the last day of winter. Friday is right in between the last day of winter and the Sabbath, and it is the last day of Purim. Pray that your flight be not in winter, neither on the Sabbath day. So we have been watching this most important 70th year of Israel, the rebirth of Israel from May 14th, 1948, the 70 years of Daniel bringing us from 1948 to 2018. We have year 5778 that goes from Nisan 1, 2018 to Nisan 1, 2019. And we have the last feast of 5778 is Purim. And the last day of Purim is Friday, March 22nd, 2019. On this day, just as it says in Matthew 24:20, flight not in winter, nor on the Sabbath. Friday, March 22nd, 2019, the last feast of 5778, Purim, the last day of Purim, just as it is said, I will raise you up on the last day. I pray you're blessed today. This is Steve Fletcher with a trumpet for my people, the sign of his coming revealed.